Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories. And if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. And let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Now, today's first story comes from the Am I the Arsehole and Pro Revenge subreddit, and it's from a string of numbers that'll be on the screen, and it's titled Am I the Arsehole for how I handled this co-worker insulting me. And there's a couple of trigger warnings on the story in case you do want to skip it. It contains talk of cancer, body shaming, a hostile workplace. It starts, I'm 28. When I was 24, my mum died of breast cancer, after both my nanas also died of it. I got some tests done and found that I did have some potentially cancerous cells in my breast tissue. And the doctor said I could either wait and see if they did turn harmful, or I could get ahead of it and get a double mastectomy. I got the double mastectomy. I was warned about scarring, but not the extent of it, and wound up with scars an inch long and half an inch wide on my chest, and I hated the way it looked. It got to the stage where it was having a serious impact on my mental health. I felt sick seeing myself and I wouldn't leave my flat. I went to a therapist who did some CBT with me before she suggested seeing a plastic surgeon about scar reduction. The plastic surgeon said the scars could be hidden with implants. I was naturally big, an F cup, before the mastectomy, so I opted to go with slightly smaller but still fairly large DD-sized implants. They hid the scars pretty well and I'm happy with them. My mental health improved and I felt comfortable in my own skin again. A few months ago, I was at work having lunch with this friend of mine and we were planning a holiday. She made a joke about my boobs exploding on the plane. The friend knew me before the surgery and I knew she wasn't being mean, so I laughed. Our co-worker Jill overheard and, not knowing about the cancer thing, told everyone that I'd had a boob job. She hated me from then on out and she's made a bunch of jokes to the other co-workers, calling me fake in 2 ways and more plastic than Barbie. All when I was in earshot. I've asked her to stop more than once. We were all having lunch today, me, Jill and a few others, and a co-worker, Bob, was talking about his daughter wanting to marry this guy who has nothing going for him. And I said that Bob was being a little shallow. Jill replied, well, you'd know all about being shallow, gesturing at my chest. I'd had enough and said, do you know why I have these? A few years ago, the doctors found potentially cancerous cells in my breast tissue. I was advised to get a double mastectomy by a doctor and was left with huge ugly scars on my chest. I went to see a therapist and a cosmetic surgeon who advised me to get implants to hide the scars. And I did, just so I could look at myself in the mirror without crying. So maybe next time you want to judge someone for having cosmetic surgery, you should ask them why they had it first. And feeling like that was a mic drop moment, I picked up my food and left. Someone from the lunchroom came to talk to me, saying Jill was just joking. I was being oversensitive and a bitch about it when Jill didn't know about the cancerous cells. I replied that maybe Jill shouldn't have been a bitch to begin with. It's the end of the day now, and half of the office seems to side with Jill and the other half with me. Am I the arsehole? Absolutely not the arsehole, and I hope Jill gets in the shit on this one because she shouldn't be talking about anyone's body, period. And that's all there is to it. And then the fact that she acted victimized herself when she got called out for it and is trying to turn it all around on you? Yeah. Absolutely not the arsehole. But a commenter says not the arsehole. Jill shouldn't be commenting on her co-workers' bodies. This could easily be seen as sexual harassment. Edit, OP, please mention to HR that you repeatedly asked Jill to stop commenting on your body, and she refused. I don't see this ending well for Jill since she continuously commented on your body and pushed you to the point of feeling uncomfortable in the workplace. OP responds saying, I don't have any record of it. I only ever spoke to her about stopping in private. The 4 times I asked were in the lift, twice, the stairwell and the women's bathroom. All places without cameras, so the only person who can confirm I asked her is Jill herself. I can prove she'd been making comments about my body by asking any co-worker she spoke to, but can't prove I asked her to stop. OP edits the post and says HR wants to see me about creating a hostile work environment. So it looks like someone reported either me or Jill or both. Mini update, HR wants to see me tomorrow, so I'll update after work. If they're dealing with this quickly though, it can't be good. Mini update 2, some co-workers have offered to write me letters of support for HR tomorrow, basically saying that they've seen Jill harass me complete with rough dates and times. Commenter said, "Who filed the HR complaint?" OP says, "Wouldn't be surprised if it turned out Jill was the one who reported me. She has a friend in HR. Would it count as sexual harassment?" Answer replies that saying, and quoting, she has a friend in HR, and says, "If the note is from that friend or the meeting is with that friend, I'll try to go over ahead as fast as possible, perhaps initiating a counterclaim. Not sure if that's the right term. You may want to ask over at r/legaladvice or r/legaladvice UK if you're in the UK as someone else guessed." OP says, "I am in the UK. The email is from Jill's friend, so it looks like the friend will be overseeing the complaint. There's something in my contract that basically says if HR ever gets involved, I have the right to an unbiased overseer and can request a different one if I can prove the current one is biased. So if it is this woman, and I can show she and Jill are friends, then I might be able to fix it or go above her head." So this is the point where OP moved over to another subreddit, r/pro-revenge, titling the post, "Coworker tried to get me fired over breast implants, so I pulled a reverse Uno card." And they went over what we've already covered, but then continued. For the rest of the day, I had about 1/3 of my office come up to me and offer support, and the rest tell me that Jill was just joking around and I was being a bitch. I replied that Jill was being a bitch long before I was. I then got an email from HR saying they wanted to talk to me the following day. And when I called for clarification, they mentioned a hostile work environment. Note, this is apparently an American term and holds little weight in England, but it's what was said over the phone. I knew the person who signed off the email and I'd spoken to. Her name was Debbie, and she was Jill's friend in HR, so I was fairly confident on who had reported me. I realized that if this was already being sent to HR, I needed as much ammunition as possible, so I went about collecting my information. As Debbie had dealt with me so far, it was safe to assume she'd be the person reviewing the complaint with me. And if that was true, I was fucked. However, I vaguely remembered a section on complaints that was in my contract when I first signed with the company. I flicked through the contract. There's a part in the complaint section that said I was contractually allowed to request a change of reviewer if I felt my allocated reviewer was biased. It was called an impartial overseer. I photocopied the page and highlighted that part. Then I messaged the people who had offered their support over Facebook and said basically, "HR have asked to see me. Do any of you remember Jill insulting me to your face, or are you willing to write and sign something saying what you heard and when?" Not everyone was willing to help, as Jill is somewhat feared in the office due to her befriending HR and management, but about 20 people were willing to help me. I guessed roughly when I'd asked Jill to stop previously. The 4 asks over the last few months, some timings were easy to guess, as they happened on my break or when I'd first arrived at work, and I wrote them all down, along with a rough time of when the lunchroom confrontation happened and a list of names who was there for the lunchroom confrontation. I got to work slightly early the next morning. I went round everyone who had messaged me, and most of them managed to give me a printed and signed letter. Some didn't manage to write one out, but no big deal. This isn't exact words, as there's 16 letters to sum up here, but the gist was, "My name is," then their name. I was with Jill, last name, and OP, on date, time, approximately. I spoke with Jill, last name, during which she referred to OP as quoted insult. I felt this was inappropriate as it directly related to OP's appearance, and I'm willing to go on record further to establish that Jill, last name, has been discussing OP in the workplace in the same manner for 3 months now, causing me discomfort and creating what I feel is a hostile work environment. Signed, their name. I wound up with about 16 letters, all from different people, and one of them was in the lunchroom from my conversation with Jill. Some even had bullet-pointed lists of everything Jill had said to them about me or other people. As it turns out, Jill has issues with a lot of people's appearances. She apparently made comments about one co-worker's weight and something anti-Semitic about a different co-worker's nose. All of which were put in these letters. There are about 45 people in the office, so while 16 wasn't a majority, it's still a decent amount. The letters weren't hugely long, most only a paragraph, but they all had the necessary information. I was asked to come to HR at 10 AM. I took the letters from the co-workers, the photocopy of the page in my contract, and my dates and times in a little folder with me. I got there and Debbie was the one overseeing the interview. She got up from her desk, ready to lead me into another room. I immediately turned to the other HR worker that was currently there and said, "So, is my meeting with you then?" Debbie said, "No, you're with me." I replied that this wouldn't sit well with me as my contract states I have a right to an impartial overseer, and as I said this, I took the contract page out of my folder. Debbie read it. I wouldn't let her take the paper when there was a shredder so close by, and said she could be impartial. I replied that I really didn't mean to be a pain, but I had it on good authority that the person on the other end of this complaint is her friend, and my contract does say I'm allowed an impartial overseer. Debbie stomped off to get supervisor. Supervisor asks how I know she can't be impartial, and I tell them that I have it on good authority that it was Jill, who was on the other end of this complaint, is a close friend of Debbie. He asked Debbie if this was true, to which she only replied, "I can be impartial." Supervisor took a deep breath, asked the other HR rep to come with him, and the four of us all went to review the complaint. I thanked them for being so accommodating. I was worried I'd annoyed them. Debbie took out the complaint and all three of them went through it with me. Debbie looked homicidal the whole time the interview was happening, as she clearly had anticipated firing me, or at least recommending me being fired. The interview went something like this. It took like over half an hour and they kept asking me the same questions but phrased different ways, so this is a really drastically condensed version. Question: You said that you'd think Jill last name reported you. Why is this? Opie said Jill has had an issue with me for about 3 months now. Question: Why didn't you come to us when you realized Jane had an issue? Opie says I had no issue with her. Question: What issue does Jill have with you? Opie says 4 years ago, a specialist identified potentially cancerous cells in my breast tissue. Had surgery to remove my breast tissue, thereby removing the cells and the risk. After the surgery, I was left with large scars on my chest. I went to a therapist for low self-esteem and depression. The therapist suggested a plastic surgeon who suggested breast implants to cover my scars. All of this is in my medical history, which you have a copy of in my file, and my full permission to review. Jill found out about my breast implants but didn't know about the cancer. Jill had a problem with my breast implants and decided to communicate this problem to our co-workers. Question: Why do you feel this is true? Opie says, here's 16 signed statements, all from different co-workers, all testifying that Jill told the entire office I'd had breast implants on the day she found out, and has since made comments about these implants frequently. They have quotes of what Jill said to them, and it has rough dates and times. Question: Rough dates and times? Opie says, no one knew this would be escalated to such an extent, so no one really took notes as to when it happened. Question: What event or events do you think directly led to this complaint of harassment? Opie says, for me, harassment began when Jill told everyone about my breast implants without my consent. But as to the complaint placed against me, it'd probably be about what happened at about time yesterday in the lunchroom. Jill made a comment about me being shallow while gesturing to my breasts, and I replied by giving her an abridged version of my relevant medical history and ending with a comment about the importance of getting the full story. There are cameras in the lunchroom, so I'm sure you'll be able to find that conversation. I'll admit I could have handled the situation better, but after 3 months I felt I had to put my foot down. Here's a list of names of people who were also present. There were 6 people at the table, including myself and Jill. One of these people is also in those letters and has written their account of the conversation and signed it. Question: Had you had a conversation with Jill prior to this regarding her comments about you? Opie says several, spaced out over the last 3 months. Each time I communicated to her that I felt uncomfortable and upset with these comments she was making and would appreciate it if she were to stop. Question: To your knowledge, was Jill made aware of your former cancer at any point in this time? Opie says no. It wasn't mentioned in the conversation with my friend. She overheard, and I didn't tell her because frankly it's none of her business, and I did not feel the need to detail my medical history to a co-worker in order to avoid further sexual harassment. Then the supervisor stands up and says, well, I think we're done here. He shakes my hand and sends me back to my desk, saying that I'd hear from them after they've reviewed the evidence, letters, CCTV, medical history, and anything they had already, and made a decision on the case. I got back to my desk, pulled up my CV, and prepared to start the job search again. About an hour goes by, then the person who wrote the letter and was there for the lunchroom conversation gets called for a meeting with HR. They come back 10-ish minutes later. The other people who were also there for the lunchroom conversations get called one by one, except Jill. All of them are gone for about 10 minutes, then come back, find a co-worker and say that HR wants to see them. Then the people who wrote the letters, but weren't there yesterday, are also called one by one and are each gone for about 10 minutes each, some longer, some shorter. By about 3:30 it looks like everyone who wrote a letter or was there in the lunchroom has been interviewed. Then finally, Jill gets called in. She's gone for about 30 minutes and comes back fuming. She glares at me while I work, but I ignore her. 4:30ish, Jill gets called into HR again. 5 PM rolls around, everyone is either leaving or getting ready to leave, when Jill storms back into the office. She glares at me the whole time she packs up her desk. She then starts telling anyone who will listen that I got her fired before shoving her way into the lift. An email comes in from HR. My case is closed. Edit. Just want to add that regardless of my reasons for getting implants, I still should not have been harassed over them. It just happened to be relevant here because it made Jill look like a real dick, which is probably why she reported me. Good on OP for sorting that out in the way they did. I was really surprised by the amount of letters that OP got though. I thought, a lesser amount would have done the job. And I was also sus about, has Jill been reported in the past for anything else? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's move on to another story. Now, our next story comes from the Am I the Arsehole subreddit from Drantula7, who says, Am I the Arsehole here? For refusing to give my family free culinary services for a party. It starts, I, 22 male, am a trained chef and recently graduated from a course in culinary school. It was a bit expensive and my aunt and mum contributed to help me pay the fee there. Relevant later. Ever since I finished and started to use my skills to earn some cash, my family has been treating me as some personal chef, which I didn't mind at all at first. It started small helping out at family gatherings, giving tips on recipes, but now it seems I'm actually expected to be doing real loads of work for free. Last week, my aunt asked me to cater my cousin's engagement party, which she invited 50 plus people, which was wild as she just approached me while casually saying other professional chefs are too expensive for her. When I said I couldn't do it for free, she acted shocked and says, We're family, we're family, and you wouldn't have this opportunity if I didn't invest in your skills. So she went and spread the word around on how I refused to help her. And some uncles and cousins are telling me how I'm sort of greedy and I should use the opportunity to repay the favor she did me. I told them I love cooking, but it's my job now and I can't work for free. Now they're calling me selfish altogether. Am I the arsehole here? Some classic family entitlement. They paid towards some tuition, so now you owe them unlimited professional services of your skill. Couldn't imagine treating a family member that way, could you? You contribute a bit to them. I still wouldn't be expecting free services. Paying towards someone's education doesn't mean you own their career, because the We're Family card doesn't cover ingredients, time, labor, expertise, everything else. Bloody cheeky bastards. But similar name says not the arsehole. But pay back your mum and aunt what they contributed ASAP, as they viewed it as an investment that they would receive perpetual dividends on. Turn it into a loan you repaid in full to cut that off. If you leave it, they'll hold it over your head forever. Opie says, didn't even think of this. I'll definitely take this as a loan and pay them back. Straight ad says not the arsehole. She's asking you for product, time and labor. She should be paying you. Even if it wasn't a standard rate, she should have offered to pay you. Not that you have to, but if you want to smooth things over, I'd agree to make a dessert and a batch cocktail, so as long as she supplies everything or reimburses you for any ingredients you bought. Opie says, yeah, I think I'll do just a small hand in this. Thanks. Brick Chef comes in with a reply in their own little story that happened to them and said, yeah, I'm a catering chef for a conference center and I've done events for over 2,000 people. I got voluntold by my mother-in-law to cater a pancake supper for my church. Was told 100 people would be coming. I got enough for 150. 320 people showed up. Sent out people to get more pancake mix, eggs and sausage at a grocery store. Ran out of fruit and sausage. A volunteer came in the kitchen freaking out and yelled at me. I ended up losing my cool and yelled back. She ended up crying in front of everyone and I looked like an arsehole. 2 things happened after that. 1. I never stepped foot in that church again. And 2. I never catered for friends or family or acquaintances again. I get asked all the time, but it's a hard no. My sister asked me to cater her wedding and I refused. You become kind of a servant and your own family and friends will treat you like the help instead of family. And it's amazing the amount of people that were sharing their own similar stories about how they trained in the same things, culinary school, I guess, and just have family members like falling all over themselves to try and get you to use their skills for them for free. There was a really sad comment in there that's saying like, just get used to it. You're going to get this for the rest of your life now. And it's just like, really? And although the one comment said maybe make them this thing just to smooth things over, I'm not sure I would in this. I think I'd want the boundary to be put up first and them understand that, no, you're not getting anything for free. And don't get me wrong, it's one thing for them to come up to you and ask, would it be okay? Would you be able to help out at this event, etc.? Don't worry, we'll supply all the food, etc., etc. Is there any chance you could help out? I think that's one thing, but to come in with, we contributed towards your education, so now you owe us, is just bullshit. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the absolute world to me, so thank you so much, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care, and much love.